I recently watched a documentary on Netflix about Jimmy Savile. I was somewhat taken aback at the chilling parallels between Jimmy Savile and my story. In case you didn't know, Jimmy Savile was the doyen of British society for decades, as he was the host of a show called Top of the Pops. He was adored by people from all age groups, from children to teenagers to middle-aged people to even older adults. He was somewhat eccentric, and I must say that I found him quite creepy and irritating from the outset. But be that as it may, the British public adored him. He even ingratiated himself with Margaret Thatcher, Prince Charles, and Diana, to name but a few. He seemed to have an affinity for children's homes and hospitals, and there was a rather sinister reason for this. Towards the latter part of his life, rumors started surfacing about how he liked little girls, but nobody ever took the trouble to actually investigate these allegations. Detailed letters documenting his paedophile behavior were swept under the carpet. Women who'd come forward to lay complaints were simply ignored, and the charges were dropped or ignored. It was only when he died that the truth came out, and it turned out that there were over 400 cases of women coming forward and telling their stories about Savile's nefarious conduct. The point I'm making is that Savile was deeply loved and respected in the public eye, but he managed to conceal a very evil side of his character. The bad actors in my story are also squeaky clean and respected in the public eye, but the truth, which I'll share on this forum and in a book I'm writing, is very different. As you can see from the articles on the internet about me, I'm deeply vilified as this grossly incompetent surgeon who set out to harm people. That's why I'm telling my story, because if you get my version of the story, it's very different from the one that you see on the internet. The complainants at the HPCSA were simply pawns in the game. With regard to the Jimmy Savile story, a journalist featured on the program admitted that the press had got it completely wrong, and they were remiss in not exposing Savile sooner. I believe that the press has got my story very wrong, but in the other direction. The bad actors easily influenced them in this story. If you enjoy these videos, please like and subscribe to my channel. It really does help me to tell my story. I get the odd email from people who contact me from time to time, having seen my website. Now, without exception, there have been messages of support. These people are horrified at the glaring disconnect between what has been reported in the media and my version of events, and the gross distortion of facts. I received this email a few weeks ago, and I'll preserve the writer's anonymity. Here is the email that I received. This is fascinating, and I think you were set up by some bad actors. The question is, why? Why you? Does this happen to other plastic surgeons? I think he meant to say other plastic surgeons. If not, why not? By the way, you did a breast augmentation on my friend's daughter with great results. I find it fascinating how from the limited information that I have shared on my vlog so far, that this reader has correctly inferred that there's a very sinister backstory. Before I deal with the questions from the person who sent the email, let me deal with the first question. Why? The reason for this witch hunt was plain and straightforward. Revenge. I had a verbal altercation with an old plastic surgeon who for now I will call bad actor 1. And me not realizing that he was a full-blown psychopath and that crossing him constituted a career-ending move, I rushed in where angels fear to tread. I called him on his bullshit. The details of the story of the altercation are even more mind-blowing, but that's a story for another day. He plotted revenge for years and indeed invested a great deal of money into executing his frame-up. By the way, a frame-up is a conspiracy to incriminate someone falsely. So the answer to the second question, namely, why me? I unwittingly challenged Bad Actor 1 on his despicable, unprofessional and disgusting conduct by reporting him to the president of the Association of Plastic Surgeons. The executive committee, as a result of a slew of complaints about him from fellow plastic surgeons who deeply loathed him for his nefarious conduct, relieved him of his post. In other words, he was fired. The position he held was for him to mediate between plastic surgeons and disgruntled patients in order to resolve issues amicably, to pour oil on troubled waters. He loved this position of power where he could encourage disgruntled patients to sue or complain to the HPCSA, and more often than not, he inflamed the situation rather than diffusing it. In his rage and anger, he vowed to exact revenge for his dismissal from his post. Everything you see on the internet about me is a product of this carefully crafted vendetta. I naively believed that a fair and just process would protect me at the HPCSA when I had the opportunity to tell my version of events. But I was wrong. I wouldn't be surprised if the bad actors had a hand in determining the outcome of the rigged sham hearings at the HPCSA. Now, if you like this video and subscribe to my channel, you can read a serialized book that I'll be releasing in the coming months, and you can see exactly how rigged the process was at the HPCSA. The next question is, does this happen to other plastic surgeons? The answer is yes. As I mentioned previously, Bad Actor 1 was deeply loathed by his peers because of his spiteful, malicious, and vindictive conduct. My story is probably the most public, as it evoked the most anger and hatred from him, because he was deeply shamed by his being ejected from the post he held. But I suspect that many plastic surgeons have had their careers damaged or wrecked by Bad Actor 1. So the answer to the question, if not, why not? Well, it's simply a question of whether you are in the inner circle of the Association of Plastic Surgeons. If you have not been admitted to the inner circle because you're not prepared to rim the gang leaders' anuses, you'll be ostracized and thrown under the bus if you step out of line or incur the wrath of Bad Actor 1. If you are fortunate enough to be in the inner circle, known as the Old Boys Club, you will have protection and immunity from any of the attacks from Bad Actor 1. Unfortunately, I was not in the inner circle. So with the blessing and collaboration of the Old Boys Club, Bad Actor 1 was able to exact his revenge with impunity. The powers that be were fully appraised of his plan and indeed complicit. You see, he was a bully and would never attack a member of the Old Boys Club, because if he did, he would be ejected from the association, deepening his shame. If you've been watching the other videos, you'll have probably figured out that Bad Actor 2 is a guy called Gary Austin, a medical malpractice attorney practicing in Benoni. But that's not terribly difficult to figure out, as he features prominently in all the tabloid newspaper articles and carte blanche documentaries trashing my reputation. Bad Actor 3 is undoubtedly the Health Professions Council of South Africa. This deeply corrupt, dysfunctional organization is the bane of healthcare professionals across the board in South Africa. Their processes are deeply flawed, and their officials are rampantly corrupt. I relate my personal stories of corrupt prosecutors and other shocking stories about the rampant corruption within the HPCSA in future videos. You may get the impression that I am bitter and twisted about this whole saga. Well, I'm not. This experience has proved to be one of the most growth-enhancing experiences of my life. In the words of Nietzsche, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. And I'm immeasurably stronger and a better person for the experience. The Stoics say that the best revenge is to do nothing, because you don't want to be like your haters. My haters are infused with anger and hatred, and they will never be free of those toxic emotions. It's actually quite pitiful. Sure, I've had a lot to work through, a lot of anger to work through, and other negatives, being the target of a gross miscarriage of justice. But the reality, it's happening all over the world, every day. And at the end of the day, the only way to deal with the misfortunes of life is to adjust your attitude. I had no control over this attack on my character, reputation, and career. I do, however, have control over my attitude and response, and that's been incredibly liberating. I really bear no hostility towards my haters and detractors, and a quote from attributed to William Shakespeare is most fitting. Love me or hate me, both are in my favor. For if you love me, I will always be in your heart. If you hate me, I will always be in your mind.